Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Rocky Top Insider Diamond Pass podcast. I'm your host, Jack Foster, joined alongside Ryan Shumpert, as always, coming at you on a Monday evening. You're listening to this sometime during the week, Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday. And of course, we have a lot to discuss regarding Tennessee baseball's series loss to Kent State. A shocker at that. Dropping one game, maybe you understand, but losing a series like this early in the season is jarring, to say the least. So a lot to get into, recapping Tennessee's first series loss to a non-conference opponent non-P4 opponent since 2020. But first, Ryan, how you doing on this Monday night?
Doing well. Yeah. Glad to, well, I shouldn't say glad. It's just a different feel to a podcast this early in the season. Definitely not a good feel, but, things have gotten a lot more serious for Tennessee basketball, a lot Tennessee baseball, a lot, faster than we expected.
It's uncharted territory a little bit, right? I mean, especially for me covering the team. Like I just said, the stat is 2020. That's when Tennessee lost to Wright State in a 3-game series, dropping 2 of 3. But this just didn't happen this decade yet, really. It's sure, we've seen struggles from Tennessee early in the season, like in 23, when Tennessee lost 2 of 3 to open the year in Arizona. But that was at least to Grand Canyon, a good baseball school. And then, of course, Arizona, who was a definite, going to make the NCAA tournament team. Now, Kent State, got to give them their credit. They play small ball really well. They pitch. They play fundamentals. They're kind of like Kentucky. But still, you don't expect Tennessee to lose to a MAC school. And might I add that the series rubber match really wasn't all that competitive. Had it not been for a complete blunder from Kent State shortstop in the middle of the game, Tennessee would have scored 3 runs and lost by 6. And Ryan, there's a lot to get into. We're not going to go into, game by game details, what happened inning by inning, but we are going to talk about the big picture thing. And where I want to start is the lack of command from Tennessee's pitching staff. 6 hit by pitches Friday night, a game that was started by Tegan Coons. Mark Hindy pitched. There were a couple of others, Braden Krenzel. Bo Rudy blew the save late. Brady Frederick comes in, kind of settles things there at the end. So use a lot of arms Friday night. And then 4 hit by pitches on Sunday, making for 10 on the weekend. And I believe that is definitely the most Tennessee has had since 2022, in the year 2022. And before that, Tennessee didn't keep series stats, so it's really difficult. It would take a really long time to try and figure out when's the last time Tennessee hit 10 or more batters in a weekend. So I didn't quite go that far. But I know it's the most in a long time. And talking to SID Sean Barrows, he thinks it's probably the most since 2017 or 18. So the lack of command is what really stuck out, because hit by pitches, 13 walks as well on the weekend. That is definitely something we didn't see from Tennessee when Frank Anderson was, of course, a part of the coaching staff. But it's something we saw this weekend, and really it was just 2 games, as Saturday's pitching was phenomenal.
Yeah, it just felt like very few clean innings. Like, as a whole, it didn't feel like the pitching was terrible. There were a couple of very bad outings individually. But it just didn't feel like anything was very crisp for anyone in Tennessee staff over the course of the weekend. And the hit by pitches, was just crazy. It felt like it was nonstop.
Yeah, when I was doing my research, going back through the last handful of years, most weekends Tennessee would hit 2 to 4 batters. It was 2, 3, 4. Maybe there was a 6, but 10. This is high number.
And it's 10 with 13 walks too, which 13 walks isn't just an insane amount, but it's more than you want, period, and certainly more than you want against the MAC team second week of the season. And it was wild pitches. It was Tennessee being unable to control the running game, which just certainly doesn't all fall on the pitching. Some of that falls on Stonewallis behind the plate too, but I don't think, there were times pitching didn't do him favors either. So it was just so many issues with the command, and so many just sloppy, just very Tennessee in the field and on the mound was very, very sloppy, I think is the best way to describe it.
That was the headline I used Sunday, because sloppy play was the story of Tennessee's, loss in the series finale. And that was all facets, right? Like, the offense struggled again, primarily. Defense wasn't good. Base running wasn't good. There were errors all over the place, all facets of the game. And, the high note of the weekend, I guess the high note would be Tyler Myatt's pinch hit walk-off homer in the 9th in game 1. But it was Landon Mack and Brandon Arvidsson on Saturday. Look, Mack has had 2 above average outings. I wouldn't call either of them particularly dominant. He gets high in the count sometimes. He, has to work around trouble here and there. So it's never just complete smooth sailing cruise control for him, at least through 2 appearances so far. But he has not let anything get away from him. And look, he's only given up 2 runs. So he's done really well. And he's been Tennessee's best starting pitcher so far this year. And then Brandon Arvidsson making his season debut. First batter he faces is a double. After that, just full shutdown. And striking 5 of 8 batters he faced, he looked like someone that he looked like what you'd expect out of Brandon Arvidsson this season, given how he finished a year ago, and someone that Tennessee needs, Ryan, because if the bullpen is going to pitch like this, taking into account how Braden Krenzel, while he was solid Friday, didn't, meet standard on Sunday. Bo Rudy blows a save, and you figure he's among the top bullpen arms. Ethan Beoto struggles in his debut on a weekend status. So there was a lot of question marks coming out of these bullpen performances, but not Brandon Arvidsson.
No, he looked like, a guy that we said might be the best guy on the staff entering the season. He was dominant, picked up right where he left off last year. Then last year, striking out a ton of batters. His command was much better. Didn't none of those free passes that we're talking about that he allows. So yeah, that was the good sign. As much as anything for Tennessee on the pitching staff, and it'll be interesting again to see. Evan Blanco's been a little bit underwhelming for 2 weeks. I don't think you need to make a move away from him right now. But if Arvidsson continues to look like a guy like this, the conversation will turn into about getting him into the starting lineup or into the starting rotation. And through 2 weeks, Blanco would be the obvious guy that he would replace. But yeah, and I think I'd say too with the pitching staff, like disappointing. I think Bo Rudy was the one that I felt really good about, and for him he gets the first save opportunity this season when he got, it wasn't a save opportunity on game 2 of the Nichols series, but he came in a 4-run game in the 9th inning. It was pseudo save situation. So it's clear that he was kind of viewed as that guy at this point. And for him in his first opportunity of the year, not only to blow the save, but Brady Frederick had to come in and, bail him out.
Yeah, and he does.
He got one out and exited with the bases loaded, and having allowed a run to tie the game. So it very easily could have spiraled on him. It wasn't like he pitched a full inning and he gave up a solo home run and he blew the save, but it was like, that's kind of a one-off. So that part is disappointing. I know Josh Elander addressed it after, saying that he was available, but they're just kind of taking it slow. No Cameron Appenzeller was strange to me. Obviously, I
whole weekend. Yeah,
I didn't. I was not at the final 2 games of the series, so I was a little more removed from it. But that just felt odd for a guy that had looked like one of Tennessee's 2 or 3 best bullpen arms to play 3 competitive games and him not throw.
Yeah, let's shift to that for a second, because he threw 55, 56 pitches, I want to say, Tuesday against UNC Asheville. Piggybacks off of Blaine Brown's opening role and does really well after struggling in his first inning he pitched that game. But the spot you'd assume Tennessee would have turned to him on Sunday's game after not pitching Friday night. Okay, that makes sense. Saturday, Tennessee didn't really need him to pitch. Sunday, it's like, okay, you're going to see Cameron Appenzeller today. And look, Evan Blanco struggles with command. He's up to 80 pitches after 4 innings. Tennessee goes to the bullpen. You think that's where Cameron Appenzeller would enter the equation, but it's freshman Ethan Beoto who gets a clean inning. And, Josh and the staff are high on him. He had no command of the strike zone. He, walks and hits batters to load the bases before recording it out, and things just start spiraling. Tennessee goes to Nick Abraham, but the story is Cam Appenzeller never pitches, but he was available. So I think that was weird, as you said. And, Josh Elander talked about how, you have a plan and the pitch count, you just want to keep a guy on a certain plan this early in the season, which is all well and good. But obviously Tennessee was in major jeopardy to lose the series Sunday. And to me, I would think that losing the series is what you'd much rather avoid than messing up any sort of, specific plan with Cam Appenzeller. But it doesn't happen. And and Ethan Bayotto struggles. Nick Abraham comes in, does okay, but he hits his first batter, which brings in a run, so you can't say it was a good appearance for him. And then Tennessee turns to a couple of other pitchers to finish that one out. But yeah, the lack of Appenzeller was weird, and I think that that's not going to happen again. It's kind of to bring this full circle. I feel like Appenzeller has been a top 3 to 4 pitcher for Tennessee so far in terms of how he's looked, and Tennessee will begin relying on him more on weekends.
Yeah, the only theory I have is maybe he wasn't available until Sunday because of the amount of pitches he threw on Tuesday, which even then I wouldn't think so. And then maybe
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying maybe just the cold weather on Sunday. They didn't want to push it with his arm. That would match. He was available. He was part of the plan on Sunday. We just didn't want to use him because we didn't want to push it. Maybe. But that was, that's my only theory there. And like you said, I don't think we're going to see many weekends the rest of the way as long as he's healthy. Where Cameron Appenzeller's not throwing.
Wrapping up the convo on Frederick and Rudy before we move to just a pitching roundup here. Shout out Brady Frederick. Talked about how Arvidsson and Mack were the highlights, but Brady Frederick was as well. Comes in Friday with the bases loaded, 1 out, gets 2 crucial ground balls to not allow another run to score and keep the game tied. And then on Sunday, really settled the game. Things had completely unraveled for Tennessee in the middle innings. He comes in the 6th, gets out of it, I believe retired the side around the single. And then in the 7th, he gets 2 outs. And then it's an unlucky infield single. And then he hits a guy and he's pulled. And look, so yeah, he exited the game with, putting 2 runners on, and he ends up having some runs go against him on the day. But I thought for the most part, Brady Frederick looked pretty solid in this series after being underwhelming opening weekend.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Definitely better than the final numbers of the weekend look, as you just said. And yeah, I mean, I think, we talked about it on here on our season preview pod where it's like Brady Frederick kind of struggled in the offseason. It didn't look great, but, maybe he gets it going in the season. Arm slot, uniqueness, that's all his, his traits that you lose some of that when you're facing the same guys every day. And so for him to come out the first weekend of the year and not look good was like, row.
Yeah.
But, they don't win. He was a huge part of them winning the game on Friday night. And like you said, I think he threw well on Sunday, but certainly better than his final numbers look. So, that would probably be like the 2 positive developments for the pitching staff over the weekend would be how good Arvidsson looked in his first action, and then Brady Frederick looking better. I mean, obviously Teagan and Landon Mack were solid too, but that wasn't, neither of those were surprising. Outside of the norm of what we'd seen on early this season. So that was to me a positive development.
By the way, Braden Krenzel was the one who relieved Frederick there on Sunday, and I think Josh Ealer would like to have that decision back, of course, because Krenzel hits a guy, and then there's a wild pitch, which if you saw it went completely behind the batter because it got stuck to his hand. Then 4-pitch walk, and then a 2-run single, like spiral. So that is what allowed Frederick's line to look worse than what it actually was. With the way he was pitching, I think he probably could have got out of that inning unscathed. And then Tennessee would have only been down 1 run entering the bottom of the 8th instead of 4. Not that Tennessee scored again for it to matter anyway, but still. You talked about
the dynamic.
Yeah, it does change the dynamic, of course. You talked about Teagan. Solid, yes, but did walk 3 and hit 3. So 6 free passes. Only allowed 1 hit, but again, he kind of followed the same trend that others' arms did on the weekend too. So a big Friday for him, of course, against UCLA coming up.
Yeah, huge one. One that Tennessee's going to need him to be really good to have, a chance to win on Friday to not to jump ahead too much, but the way Tennessee's offense has looked through 2 weeks, and certainly the way it looked this weekend, it's hard to have much confidence that they're going to go out and put up a big number on Friday night against UCLA.
One guy we didn't mention yet, and he only threw, I believe, 2 pitches on the weekend, was Mark Hendy, and he wasn't available on opening weekend because of a sickness. Makes his season debut Tuesday. Pretty uneventful, if I remember correctly. Maybe a couple base runners, but nothing really to take away from that. And plus, it's UNC Asheville. And this, comes in a pretty high leverage spot, gets a key out, fly out to center to strand some runners. That was all we saw of him. But I think this is going to be the type of role Mark Henry, fills for this pitching staff, like the Dylan Loy or the Kirby Cannell of years past, a lefty to come in these spots and get you one key out, but maybe not extended relief, and could make multiple appearances in a weekend. In fact, I was surprised we didn't see Hendy at all on Sunday as well.
Yeah, I was a little bit too, just because he had thrown the ball well. But, it felt like they went to him early on Friday after not seeing him the first weekend of the series. So it was kind of like, okay, maybe there's a little bit more trust here than it looked like the first weekend. And not to say that that's not necessarily true, but certainly, and I guess this makes sense early in the season. I guess the observation here is just that it felt like Tennessee got a look at all their pitchers instead of doubling back on guys that threw on Friday. I mean, obviously those guys ended up pitching still because they had to.
Right.
But it was like Tennessee went to Beato first. They went to Nick Abraham first. It felt like there was an emphasis on giving guys opportunities, which I get to a degree. You're still trying to figure out what you have, but also at least a little bit surprising given just the fact that, Tennessee was on the brink of losing the series.
Yeah, I mean, the Beato one is the most shocking here. At least Abraham had pitched in opening weekend as the first out of the bullpen on opening day. But the Beato one, you can tell that, Josh and the staff are high on him. It just didn't work out. Maybe it does in the future, but it was a jarring weekend debut for him with the way it just rapidly unfolded, not recording it out and the bases being loaded on him. Final note, I guess, on the pitching staff is that, and this kind of ties into shifting to the offenses, in the early stages of this season, it looks like Tennessee is going to need its pitching staff to win a lot of games. This offense is top heavy. It doesn't seem to be too deep right now. It's lacking pop, of course. I mean, was lackluster all weekend long and horrific in one game. The onus is going to be on this pitching staff to be good this year. So that's kind of why I started on the bullpen, and that's why I'm putting the emphasis on it, is because that's the type of team Tennessee's going to have to be this year if they want to compete, for accolades in the postseason.
Yeah, 100%. And that's how I felt, not just dramatic. I didn't think we would see the hitting be such an issue this early, but that's kind of how I felt going into the season. That this offense, I didn't see the firepower of being a great offense. But I felt good about the pitching staff. I liked the starting rotation, and I liked the depth of options in the bullpen. But they need a couple of those guys to, they just need to find some more consistency. They need Evan Blanco to be more consistent.
Yep.
Evan Blanco can struggle and not be great on Sunday, but it can't be because he can't find a strike zone. He's got no chance to be successful. He can't do what Tegan Kuhns did on Friday night and walk 3 guys and hit 3 others and have the stuff to work around that and it not be the end of the world. Blanco's got to be in the zone and be competitive for him to be successful. In the fall, and I think Josh Nylander kind of said that has not been an issue for him at all in the preseason and in the fall of being in the strike zone. So need more consistency, need him to be a little bit more steady as Tennessee heads to Arlington.
17 strikeouts on the year for Evan Blanco. Are you surprised at all by that number?
Yeah, definitely. And it's not like he's gotten super deep into games either.
9 innings so far. Yeah.
Would be more shocked if you told me he gets 17 strikeouts the first 2 weekends against Georgia, and I blank on who Tennessee's got the second weekend in SEC play. So that element, who is it?
Missouri.
Well, might get 12 against Missouri.
Yeah. Right.
So the competition element makes it a little bit less surprising, but he's certainly not a guy that I anticipated going out and striking out a bunch of batters.
Yeah. That's the way his style is. He's more like Drew Beam, I guess, right? So
yes.
Yes. All right. Let's shift gears to the offense, which not a lot of positives to take away from how Tennessee hit the ball against Kent State. Like I said, Kent State, good pitching team, plays good fundamental baseball, but still, it was a rough weekend for the vast majority of Tennessee hitters. I'd venture to say pretty much all of them outside of Jay Abernathy. Henry Ford had a 3-hit day Sunday. Really nice to see. And look, led off Saturday's game with a homer. But outside of that, wasn't much. It was nothing really. And Jay Abernathy, Sorry, he did really well. But the Stone Lawless was second on the team in batting average for the weekend, but his series performance, the numbers a little bit Mickey Mouse, as you would say, because there were a couple bloop singles. He didn't come through in a couple of situations where you really needed him to with the bases loaded. Infield fly one time with one out, and then grounded into a double play the other time when there were no outs. So I don't think Stone Lawless had particularly a good weekend at the plate either, although he did get 4 hits on the series. So outside of Jay, it was a lot of lackluster performances here, Ryan, but I think you look to Levi Clark and the season he's had so far as the most troublesome development, and Tennessee's infielders providing next to nothing looking at Ariel Antigua, Chris Newstrom, and Manny Marin at the plate as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. Levi Clark to me is the most surprising. I said it that him, Blaine Brown, and Henry Ford are the 3 guys I felt really good about entering the year. Blaine Brown goes 0 for 10 this weekend. Obviously a bad weekend, but he'd flashed a lot the first weekend.
Made some good contact too.
Yes, hit the ball hard a couple times. Henry Ford I don't think has been just stellar, but he's been good. It's not like he's been far off from what anyone would have expected. He's had a nice start to the season, and then Levi's just really, really struggled. And I do feel like expanding the zone a little bit at times, which to me makes me think he's maybe just pressing a little bit, putting a little too much pressure on himself right now. So again, I'm not super worried about it. I think he's going to get the ship righted. But certainly he's if I'm pointing to who's been the most disappointing in Tennessee's lineup for 2 weeks, it's no doubt him. And then I would just stack that on top of if Levi Clark and Blaine Brown combined to go 1 for 20, Tennessee's offense is going to struggle.
No chance. Yeah, I mean,
they didn't play beer in high school, and they might have some issues if those two combined to go 1 for 20 in a 3-game series.
Yeah, it's just look. I don't think like you said, I don't think it's going to continue for Levi, but he's just behind on a lot of fastballs. It's a lot of striking out. He did get robbed of one potentially really big. A base hit that could have started a rally for Tennessee late Sunday. Shortstop dove for it. Tremendous play by a Kent State's guy. But, yeah, it's just not been good for him. And I think that he's kind of a dead spot in the 3-hole right now, or I guess 4-hole now that Jay is leading off, which we can get into in a minute. But, yeah, the story, though, for the lineup, look, Clark has struggled and he hits top the order. I get it. But you feel mostly good about what Tennessee has at the top of the lineup with Jay now leading off. Look, he hit 400 this weekend. I think he's looked really solid offensively. We know Henry Ford and Blaine Brown are good. I know Blaine Brown went 0-4, but let's be honest, he's going to be one of Tennessee's best players this season. Levi, the hope is that he'd figure it out. Reese, maybe he'll be streaky, but it's a veteran. You feel good, I think, more times than not, at least right now. But after that, I don't know what Tennessee's going to have in its lineup right now. Tyler Midas provided moments, of course. The pinch hit walk-off homer being the tops amongst them. That was really nice to see. We know he can hit the ball a long way when he gets a hold of it. But Chris Newstrom, Manny Marin, Ariel Antigua, Finley Bates got to start. These other guys, just nothing has really happened. Stone Lawless, I mentioned, I think has largely been underwhelming at the plate. I just don't know how complete this lineup is going to be for the Vols. And it's going to rely a lot on the first couple of hitters.
Yeah, I think the trio of Newstrom, Ariel, and Manny, how little you've gotten from them is probably the most worrisome. And it's 3 guys that don't have much pop in the bat.
Right.
So it's like you're not getting on base. You can not get on base and hit a home run every weekend. At least you're making a big impact there. Those guys don't really have that in their games, at least not to a high extent. Newstrom and Manny have a little bit of power. So no one's taking that job and run with it. And I think it was on here. Maybe we were talking off air last week about you felt like one of Newstrom and Ariel was going to be left out. Like, I don't know. It might be both of them. It might be Myatt, and then you get Grimmer back, and he grabs one of those spots too, and probably DH spot, and then Blaine Brown's playing in left field every day. So it's yeah, those guys have not. Those guys that we talked about in the preview, that these are fringe starters, but we're putting them on the right side of the bubble, which was really more Ariel and Newstrom. Manny, we felt better about being a for sure everyday guy. Those guys have not taken this thing and ran with it early in the season, and it will be interesting to see when Tennessee gets even a Garrett Wright you can throw into the mix. He doesn't play those positions, but you can move some things around, and Grimmer as well, how those guys change the dynamic.
And I think Garrett Wright could change the dynamic of the catcher battle too. If Stone struggles, it's not a certainty he's going to be the number one there all year long. So if Garrett Wright comes out and hits, he's going to get opportunities the way this offense is performing. Of course, the same for Blake Grimmer. And like you said, Newstrom and Ariel could be on the outs, with Myatt starting at second, Brown or Grimmer at left, the other at DH. And look, I'll say this too, tying in the defensive part of this. Manny, you kind of figure he's going to be a plus for you defensively. He really hasn't been that for Tennessee this year either. He maybe has made some nice plays I can't think of off the top of my head, but for the most part, when I think of Manny's defensive play this season, it's just been a little underwhelming. And then he has the talent. He showed it last year at times, but also he had some mistakes last year. And Ariel can be a plus for you there. I think he's a plus for you the vast majority of the time defensively. Newstrom the same. He's just, really solid. Not highlights like Ariel, but he's solid. So if Manny's not a plus for you defensively, or even maybe a negative more times than not, and isn't producing offensively, maybe we have to start having a conversation about him too. So I don't know. There's just a lot of uncertainty with this area of the lineup for Tennessee.
There's no doubt. You would have liked to have found, some clarity. And at the very least, you would like to be sitting here for 2 weeks and be like, man, Blake Grimmer, it's going to be tough for him to find a spot be tough to find someone to kick out. And, I didn't necessarily expect it to feel that way, but I also didn't think it would be like, this lineup needs Blake Grimmer to emerge and be a guy.
Yeah.
And because that's how it feels right now, is that they need him to have taken a step forward and be, not a superstar by any means, but a legit good bat in this lineup in SEC play.
And who knows, maybe the freshmen start getting opportunities as well, like Eisfelder and Taylor Tracy. And of course, we've seen Grinlinger have a couple of hits so far. Evan Hankins got one start, no hits, but maybe he gets a crack at something at some point. So there's other options here. Are any of them going to be good enough to where we start having a lot of turnover here? TBD. But I don't think it would be out of the realm of possibility to see many other guys get opportunities here within the next week, 2 weeks.
Yeah, I agree. Next week you have 2 midweek games. So, I don't think you'll see a ton of tinkering this week in Arlington. You could see some.
If they get blasted by UCLA, maybe you could,
Yeah. And that's not to say that the lineup's going to be the same all 3 days. But, to your point of these freshmen getting a bunch of opportunities, I don't think that would be the case. But, got a midweek game this week. You got 2 midweek games the week after that. And I haven't done a ton of research on this year's Wright State's team, but that was the last team Tennessee lost a non-conference series to before last weekend, and they're typically, at the very least, they're rarely bad. So
mostly in the tournament every year.
Yeah, mostly winning the Horizon, and at the very least, one of the best teams in the Horizon. So it's going to be another series that, it's not Arkansas Pine Bluff or who was the team from up in New York from a couple years ago. It was so bad.
Iona?
Iona, yeah. No Iona.
That's the
no Hofstra from last year.
Yeah. Yeah, no, doesn't seem to be the case for Tennessee this year.
No teams that we're going to be making jokes about a Tennessee basketball player having to come play outfield for him, like we did with Darlington and Dubar. So need Hofstra baseball. They need him back for the weekend to help him get a couple outs.
Look, it's so early in the season. I'm curious, like, how good is Kent State just going to be really good this year? There's unknowns here still, obviously. 2 weeks
there's
into
tons of unknowns.
A lot will get affirmed this weekend in Texas if Tennessee is just lifeless against Power 4 competition.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess the two thoughts I have on that is, I think Kent State's going to be good. I think they have a good chance to be a tournament team. You shouldn't be losing a three. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be losing a 3-game series to them. That doesn't mean that that's still not really bad. Uh, and then the second thing, and I credit to Josh Elander, he didn't buy into this, but like the notion of it's the cold weather and that was bad. Like that's not an excuse for what Tennessee did, for how Tennessee played. That can't be an excuse. That should not happen even in terrible weather. Um, what I would say, 2023, I think there was an element you look back and say Tennessee laid such an egg at Missouri because of the weather. And it
Yeah.
wasn't excusable. That doesn't mean it was excusable for them to do that, but it is something that, to the unknown aspect, we could look back in 2 months and say, maybe that played a part in why Tennessee played so poorly.
Sure, for Sunday, but it wasn't even cold Friday or Saturday. Definitely wasn't cold Saturday.
Yeah. No, you're
So
right.
it would have just been a one-day thing, and sure, the mistakes, the lack of command on the mound, fine. Credit to the cold on Sunday, but offense was bad all weekend. Like, that's just the reality. So,
And the offense had showed signs of, if not being bad, being underwhelming the first 4 games of the season too.
yeah, like they didn't hammer UNC Asheville. You kind of thought they were going to.
They didn't hammer Nichols. Even, the first game they score 10 runs or whatever it was and get the run rule. I think 10-0.
Yep.
It was 8 innings. They didn't score more than 2 runs, I think, in a single inning. Game 3, they get the run rule just because Nichols couldn't throw the ball over the plate. They couldn't find a strike zone. So, even though some of the numbers were bigger in that Nichols series, it wasn't like it didn't feel, Tennessee wasn't hitting four or 5 home runs.
Well, to expand a little more on the defensive discussion, Tennessee had 2 big highlights on Saturday out of Jay Abernathy and Blaine Brown. Blaine Brown with a brilliant throw home to catch a runner, absolute hose. And then Jay Abernathy with a diving catch in left center. Both of those happened early, and it's like, okay, this is the story of the game through 3 innings. Really good defense, saving Tennessee because they can't hit the ball. And then defense completely fell apart, specifically in the 5th inning when Henry Ford just had a lot of trouble with the ground ball and or not trouble with the ground ball, sorry, let a ball get past him. That was that time. And as a result, really, Kent State's both runs in the inning scored because of it. That was the difference in the game because Tennessee's offense couldn't do anything. So that was a big error. And then Sunday was sloppy all around. You had, a lackadaisical effort when you could have easily turned double play. Stone's throws trying to catch runners stealing at second have not been close all year long, and especially weren't close in this series. If you look at the stat sheet, there's 2 caught stealings. They weren't from him. Those were pickoffs. They go down as caught stealings, though. So I don't think his throws to second have been particularly good. One was really bad, which contributed to that horrible 5th inning for Tennessee. So it was a big emphasis for Tennessee to be good on defense going into this year. They looked good in the Nichols series, and then things just, unraveled for them. Josh Elander said he was surprised by it. Is not something that he would expect out of this team moving forward, but it is something you have to acknowledge that did happen here early.
Yeah, no doubt, and it's a big part of the weekend. It's a big story. Felt like, again, that was kind of things spiraling to me.
Yeah.
Like to the level that it happened and just some of the plays, how ugly they were. But no, it's, I don't think I say that's who this team is defensively at this point, but you certainly, it's a large sample size of it, and you put a pin in it, and it's part of the reason it was such an emphasis, and it's something we talked about last year, and I wrote about a lot. I was like, that Tennessee wasn't good enough last year to be bad defensively. They were bad defensively for large stretches of seasons in 24, and it's like, well, who cares? You can score 10 runs. You can give up a run because you play bad defense a game. Like, you can overcome that. That was not the case for Tennessee last year. They didn't have that type of offense, and they don't have that type of offense this year. So Tennessee needs to be more polished, and it just goes back to what you were talking about earlier with the pitching staff, of the need of the pitching staff. It goes hand in hand. It's run prevention, and that is mostly the pitching, but you got to play good defense too. And this needs to be a Tennessee team that is good at preventing runs. And they cannot be as bad as they were defensively this weekend. And just a lot of even to play on Sunday and I don't know, I wasn't there, so I don't get the view of it. Manny Marin's lackadaisical trying to turn a double play, essentially.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he had no chance of making that, but it seemed plausible watching it on TV, and it's just there's not a sense of urgency. Like that doesn't show up on the stat sheet as an error or an issue, but that's a play that can't be happening.
And the bases were loaded too.
Yes.
And that was the inning where Beoto gets the bases loaded. Abraham hits a guy to bring in a run, and then it's this at bat where I thought there could have been a 6-4-3 double play, and it's just a fielder's choice, runner out at second. But to me, it seemed very routine 6-4-3. Didn't happen, and yeah, there's it. By the way, also I jinxed Henry Ford.
Yeah,
Saturday,
you did.
I tweeted that he's looked very natural at third base all year because, I mean, there was no highlights, but there were some tricky ground balls hit his way that he handled seamlessly without any hesitation. And I'm used to seeing pretty bad third base play for Tennessee. And I was like, hey, this looks pretty good. Well, then after that, he completely fell apart for him. And he looked rattled defensively for the rest of the series. So I'm sorry, Henry Ford.
He had to play on Friday night. It might have been the ninth inning on Friday night.
Both of them. He had both ground balls with bases loaded through home, and then looked to second. Ariel wasn't covering. Go to first.
Yes, that was the play I was going to reference. Yeah, no, I was laughing at that because that was about the time I'd flipped it on, or really Rick flipped it on his iPad as we were sitting in Memorial Gymnasium. And that was one of the first plays I saw was the Henry Ford error in the fifth inning. And then I, got on Twitter and saw your tweet from literally 15 minutes before.
Yeah, because he had a solid play in the second or third inning. I was like, I'm going to tweet this because I've watched every single pitch this year, and this is something I just noticed. But
yeah,
that got thrown out.
That's how that goes, man.
Yeah, and then I think it was in the ninth inning when ball was hit to him, and he let him eat it up. It was ruled a single, but he should have made the play too. So there were a couple mistakes from him for the remainder of the series. But look, it's there, obviously. He's talented. So I don't have a big worry with him at third yet, but I do have a little worry with some other areas here. Also, tying into this conversation of things Tennessee can't afford to do with this type of offense is poor base running. When you get runners on, got to bring them home. Also, situational hitting, something we didn't specifically mention that we should. It was horrible all weekend long, and that was the story of Saturday's defeat. 0 of 15 with runners on, 0 of 11 with runners in scoring position. That, of course, can't happen. But there's been some base running mistakes as well. A routine ground ball to short, which Jay goes home on early Saturday. It wasn't even close. He was out at home. And Josh Nylander said that's just how they're going to play. And it was a easy decision to do that. But I don't know. Left side of the infield, there was no chance of that happening. Then Finley Bates doesn't tag up late in the game on a fly ball to center where Tennessee really needed to get a runner on third in that spot. So there were just a couple of mistakes there as well. Sloppy play all around is the overarching takeaway. But look, it's early in the season. This team is really talented. And I think we both still have a lot of faith in the pitching staff. And look, I think you can also point to a certain positive of facing this type of adversity early in the season. They already have gotten punched in the mouth going into a tough weekend in Arlington. Tennessee will be hungry to bounce back.
Yeah, I was going to add something on the situational hitting. I'm glad you brought that up. 4 of 42 on the weekend with runners on base and 3 for 22 with runners in scoring position. To me, this is a weird thing to say. That's, if you want to be positive about the offense, that's positive. I mean, you really can't be that bad again with runners on base. Yeah. There's not a Tennessee could be a bad hitting team with runners on base this year. They're not going to be that bad, which will naturally lead to being better. So that's not a fix-all. That's not the offense doesn't have any issues. But, that was a big part of why the offense was so bad this weekend. And to the extent of how bad they were, that just, that won't be that'll have some regression. Positive regression to the mean.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, any other thoughts from Tennessee's series loss to Kent State before we get out of here?
No, I don't think anything specifically. I mean, I like what you just kind of said there a minute ago. This weekend will be telling. I think UCLA is going to be really tough on Friday afternoon. I was going to say Friday night, Friday afternoon, but the other two games.
TCU.
Yeah, and TCU beat Arkansas and run-ruled Vanderbilt, I think, the first weekend of the year. TCU looked very good the first weekend of the year. I will say that against some SEC teams. So UCLA. Go ahead.
Sorry. So they beat Vandy and Arkansas each 5-4, but then got run ruled by Oklahoma.
Okay. I guess that's what I'd seen. Oklahoma. I will say that's a series that looks sneaky harder than it did before the season.
I'll say.
But yeah, no, UCLA's gonna be tough. The other two games are very, very winnable. Again, I think that how the pitching staff bounces back will be really interesting. I think the offense is going to continue to be something that's a work in progress. So we'll see if anybody gets back from injury, if Garrett Wright or Blake Rimmer, and bad sign, but it's early, and we'll see how Tennessee can respond to this, and if they can figure some things out here. I guess after Tuesday we'll be at the halfway point or over the halfway point of the pre-conference slate. So time for Tennessee to start finding some answers.
Right. Bellarmine is the Tuesday game. That'll be at 4 p.m. Eastern time, midweeks, still in the early time slots as we're early in the season. And then, as Ryan mentioned, UCLA is the Friday game. That time is 4 p.m. Eastern. Saturday and Sunday's game, both early, 12 and 11:30, respectively, Eastern time. There in Arlington as part of the M&T Bank College Baseball Series. UCLA, Arizona State, Virginia Tech, Tennessee's opponents down there. Flow College is how you can watch all three.
Yeah,
you got to
count your blessings that you're there and you don't have to watch the Flow Sports broadcast. But here we go again, trying to figure that bad boy out. But
remember when 22? It was like on MLB Network when Tennessee was in Texas. That was so nice.
Was that 22 or 23?
I believe.
I know 23 out in Arizona was on MLB Network.
It was?
Yeah.
Well, I remember watching Tennessee, Texas with Chase Burns pitching on MLB Network. So I think 22 also was.
Yeah. At least that lone game was. But no, I mean the early games are nice just in general for me, probably less so on Friday for fans. But Saturday will be good with basketball evening game. We'll be able to watch the whole thing before heading over to the arena. So excited for that aspect and curious to see what Tennessee's got.
Absolutely. Well, I'll be down there. Rock Top Insider will be boots on the ground. Live update threads for every single game to follow along at Bat by at Bat. So if you can't watch, follow along with the update thread. You'll know every single thing that happens. Further context, what happens each at bat as well. It's not just X person singled. It's actually elaborate updates. And then, of course, you can follow along RockyTopInsider.com for all other baseball coverage and men's basketball coverage this weekend too. Lady Vols in between. We got you covered on everything. Ryan, till next time.
Yep, sounds great. We'll be back ready to roll and see if we have some more positive developments to talk about.
Absolutely.